watching some 4 games of Blues hockey, right? 4 or 5 games now? 4?
4.
Yeah, 4 games of some interesting Blues hockey. Not a lot of success, but some success considering that we got the 4-game losing streak out of the way. Thank you. But that went to a 2-game losing streak to Edmonton and the Panthers, and then last night with a interesting game against Chicago, to say the least. But we're happy to be with you today, and we're not going to be necessarily recapping all of these extremely in depth, but we are going to go through some of them and see kind of where we're at as a team in terms of playoffs, maybe, and all of those implications. But so right when we left you on Sunday, we got the chance to see the Utah Hockey Club. And we weren't entirely certain, I think, going into that one, what was going to happen. We had not had some success against Utah, and we weren't sure what was going to go on. But honestly, it was a really tight game from the Blues, and they ended up, I think, hanging in there with them, and Utah hung in with them as well. And we talked about it. Texier was going to get some more playing time after the Brayden Schenn thing, and here he is with a goal, his first one of the his first one in a long time. I know he hasn't had too many on the board.
Yeah, you're talking Texier or
Texier.
Yeah, Texier. Sorry, definitely. Also, happy Super Bowl Sunday. It's a holiday as far as I'm concerned. We should have the day off tomorrow, but we don't. I think that's something maybe an administration should change, but that's okay. Utah, where dreams go to die for the Blues. I don't remember if we had ever won, whether it's in Phoenix when they were playing as the Coyotes or now in Utah. Just not a lot of success. I thought they played really well this game. It was a sight for sore eyes from my perspective. I was a bit disheartened once they tied it up in the third. I didn't know if we were going to be able to actually pull it out after that, but really resilient. And Kyrou ended up getting the go-ahead goal there, and a bit sweaty of an ending to that game, to say the least. I think they hit a post.
Yes, they did.
Yeah, but Benner played really well. No problems with his performance there. And I thought we were going to be able to ride some momentum out, but that leads us to our next game.
Well, what's interesting though is that we were criticizing the move from from Montgomery of
have to keep track, man.
Yeah, of having Matthew Joseph on that second line, and he actually had 4 shots in that game, and he didn't score in the game. But it was it was tied for most on the team in that game. So he was getting some opportunities on that second line. And I think and obviously he scored last night for the first time since October, which is crazy. But I think he's been playing pretty well, and wasn't playing on the second line last night, but his play in that game and the way he's stepping up and, getting at least a little bit of offense generated, I think has been impressive from him.
I like his game. I think I said this on the last one. I do like the way he plays. I'm not sure he's the most skilled guy in the world where he should be warranting a second line pairing, but I like his bursts. Like he brings in a lot of effort, and I think that can be of an advantage for a team like the Blues that just needs a spark. I feel like all the time to really get them going. But I don't have a problem with the way they're using him right now, especially when he's being productive, and that continued obviously throughout the week for him. So it was good to see.
Yeah, it's fitting for him. He's a long-time NHL vet, and he's had some good seasons in the past, and he really just hasn't been able to get it going this year in terms of the offense consistently. But that's not necessarily totally his fault, considering he hasn't really played all that much. He's been healthy scratched a lot, but So Edmonton, and the thing that was really interesting about this game is that I had no idea that Nick Leddy would make a return from the dead. Because we talked about it, the injury saga was incredible to watch because we had no idea what was happening. And lo and behold, Nick Leddy's back in the lineup. When I turned it on, I'm like, oh, this should be real interesting. And I thought he played pretty well. And like, not that I was expecting him to play, really badly or really good. Like, I think he just kind of did his normal role that he had on that. He never really catches anybody off guard.
He's not the flashiest guy in the world.
No.
You weren't expecting him to move into a role where he's going to be scoring, a couple goals a game. He's just Nick Leddy, just maybe sometimes reliable back there, but nothing flashy.
Nothing flashy. And
you wouldn't notice if he came back in, which I really honestly didn't. Yeah.
Well, yeah. So the issue with me in this game was Robert Thomas. We talked about him last episode, is that he had so many chances. And I've never seen a guy with so many chances and not capitalizing like that in a long time. Like, it's just back and forth, like every single time that he'd be in the offense zone. Like, credit him, he's generating chances with his line, but he just could not capitalize on them. And it's in the one when they went down in the third with the one timer, or sorry, when they were up in the third, and they and he misses the one timer that he could have gone up 2 on the Oilers. Like, you gotta get that home, and it's wide open net.
I'll tell you what, though. Well, I do want to acknowledge that his pass to Parayko on the second goal was awesome.
Oh, yeah.
It was a great pass. That's why we love Robert Thomas. But after that, I think that play pretty much happened right after that goal was scored. And Booch just puts it on a platter. And Thomas winds up like he's about to hit this thing 90 miles an hour. And he's literally right in front of the goal, wide open. And I'm like, why are you wanting to hit such an aggressive slap shot? Like, right there. But, that's just, I guess, a Monday morning quarterback type of thing. And the body language on him and Pooch after he missed that shot was honestly hilarious. Yeah. And I mean, you got to acknowledge like so much frustration there for him. And he's just like, are you freaking kidding me? And I mean, I don't know what was going on in his brain or how he missed that shot, but you can tell it's plaguing both him and Booch so badly right now. And it is a little bit funny just to see how things compile for them in the last few games.
It is. I think I'm glad we're laughing about this because I think we know that it's sort of I wouldn't say it's uncharacteristic of Thomas, but
no,
it's just kind of the way things have been going. And the offensive struggles are really, really tough to watch. And I think the Blackhawks game last night is another story when it comes to offense, but we saw this week just the struggle with that and the execution and finishing, and unfortunately that's what you have to do. But I think getting in more to the weeds with Edmonton, so I thought Bennington was sharp in that first period, but again with Kyrou and Parayko having goals about in between like 3 minutes with each other, and then. But Parayko is the only D-man in the NHL with over 10 goals and over 100 blocks. That guy has been a sensational player, and we talked about it the first episode. But I, again, emphasize more against a Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl team that can just skate wherever it wants and around you or wherever, and you're not going to do much about it. But Parayko did a phenomenal job against these guys, I thought.
He's been great. I don't have any problems with Parayko's play besides that one pass last night, but we can talk about that later. I was a bit confused when I was watching the game in the first period. I know that they're very good and they're probably going to be able to do most things and however they want. But the entries into the zone that the Blues were allowing from them, I'm like, that's got to be 1A, and trying to stop the Oilers is not allowing them just to, for McDavid especially, but Draisaitl too, just to skate right into the zone with like little to no resistance. And that first period was just pretty brutal. I know the Blues had their fair share of chances there, but I'd say mostly lackluster. But that, what was it? Was it the second period that they really turned the ship around, or
Yes.
was it the
Yeah.
third?
No,
I'm
second. Yeah. They
confusing the
really did
Florida
well.
game.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought that they deserved to win that game despite being outshot, just due to the things that we mentioned about Rob. I think Texier had another good chance, and Bolduc also had another good chance, really in a sequence of like 2 or 3 minutes right after they scored the go-ahead goal. So really unfortunate. And then they end up giving up another goal. Draisaitl, was it Draisaitl just a pill from McDavid?
It was an absolute missile.
Yeah, I mean, tough one to stop.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to blame him, but again, it's just one of those things. Like, they did it against Vegas at Vegas, where they gave up these empty net goals, and you're like, gosh, is this just a characteristic of the team where they're just going to give up a bunch of late gols while they pulled it? I can't remember last time we scored an empty net goal, and that's also because we don't win anymore. But I don't remember the last time we scored an empty netter. It was probably Booch, because he can't score real goals at the moment. So I'm not sure. But then overtime comes. I did want to bring this up because I thought it was very fun. I haven't gotten in one in a long time, but I got in a little Twitter spat because the obvious holding call on Rob from Draisaitl, it was extremely blatant, and I didn't understand how it wasn't called. I know the Oilers fans were upset about a call that was called against them, I think in the second or third period. Doesn't matter. Penalties should be called regardless. I don't really care what happened earlier in the game. But he gets held at center ice, and Rob goes down. It probably would have led to a pretty good scoring opportunity for the Blues. Doesn't mean they would have scored, but come on. And there's a linesman that's looking right at the play. And I see the picture of it after the game when they had already lost. And I'm like, God, ref's looking right at it. And these Oilers fans started spamming me in the responses, saying, that's a linesman, that's a linesman, that's a linesman. You can't call it. You can't call it. And I'm like, let's investigate. So I plugged it into ChatGPT. I scoured the internet for how linesmen can influence or not influence calls. And they cannot call it. So they're not wrong that he can't put his hand up and say, hey, that was an egregious holding call. I know I'm not supposed to do it, but I'm going to call it. He can't actually do that. However, he can literally, if there's a stoppage of play, or communicate via a headset with his headset that needs to be called, and can exercise influence to the main referees to call a penalty. And I got into a really big argument with one guy who wasn't even an Oilers fan, so I don't know why he cared that much. And he said that he was a referee, and he was like, in that moment of the game, it would never have been called. And I'm like, I don't really care about that context. Is it allowed? Like, are they allowed to have any influence over that call or not? And he seemed to just insinuate, like, well, it would never be called. I'm like, I don't know. That's not really my question. I'm saying, like, is it a possibility if there was a stoppage of play, which there was a stoppage of play like 30 seconds after that, if he would be able to determine to call a holding penalty, if it was that egregious, especially. And I think I was vindicated. That's my long-winded answer of saying I think I was right, but a lot of mad Oilers fans in the comments.
I saw your little Twitter spat about that, and I would say that I think when you talk about the characteristics of a holding penalty, it seemed like it would be, but I also though think that it may be one of those calls that just kind of goes forgotten a lot in a game and is not called. So I'm not going to be like, obviously I was really frustrated when it wasn't called. And a couple seconds later, or maybe a minute later, Draisaitl gets the OT goal. Like, that was upsetting, but I think a lot of those calls go uncalled. for a lot of the game. And and also holding is to me is one of the more subjective calls in the NHL, and it's tough to call. I know that one of the calls that I'm criticized the most is definitely that, like, because it just, you're either holding the stick or maybe holding on to his body, and sometimes it's like, he was just holding on to him for like 2 seconds, and it's just physicality.
That
I
one
don't know.
just seems so egregious, though. Like, he literally fell down because of the hold, and it's 3-on-3. So it's not like there's 5 bodies out there on each team, like, clouding the play. It's very clear. So you have a very good line of sight into each player and what they're doing with their hands. So that's the only reason I thought it was just very blatant, because there's just not a lot of bodies to block. So referees should have very good vision into what was going on during the play.
Yeah, no, I understand. I almost kind of want to see it again, just because.
It was bad, especially if you slow it down. It was definitely bad, at least from my opinion.
Yeah, because you posted it. Yeah, I forget. Oh,
That's
wait.
not the reason the Blues lost. Like, I'm not gonna like hang my hat and say, "Oh, Blues lost because they didn't call that." So I'm not
Yeah.
gonna throw that up as an excuse because the
No, no,
Blues
no.
lost that game. I mean, the way McDavid burned the living crap out of Dylan Holloway when he was skating down the ice, I honestly, he still might be biting on that 1-2 that McDavid threw at him during overtime on Tuesday. I don't
Yeah,
think Holloway's recovered because he
yeah.
got burned the living crap out of, and it was sweet. It was cool to watch, but brutal to see
Mhm.
as a Blues fan.
Okay, here we go. I'm gonna present this real quick. Here's
All
the
right,
call.
first presentation.
First presentation. All right, here we're gonna do this. So this is the call. Blues Muse. You love
Yeah,
this
this
guy.
is who I responded to.
Yeah.
You see right here, try settle with that left hand. Grabs out Thomas.
I mean, come.
Stick.
Well,
just
I want to
think
see that
it's
again.
so clear.
Right here.
Yeah,
Try settle with that left hand.
I mean,
Thomas.
he definitely is grabbing onto it.
As he goes down,
and if he's able to turn on that puck,
Yeah.
I don't know. It is what it is. I'm not going to gripe about it anymore. I just like getting into it because everyone's like, oh, no, you have to put your hands up as a linesman because you can't do anything about it. I'm like, I just know that's not true. That was my point.
No, I understand that. I think it's tough, and you hate to see that happen, especially in overtime in a game where you need to win that game against a team that's definitely better than you, and you lose it, and you would have loved to have the call. But you know, it's Connor McDavid, it's Leon Draisaitl, it's these guys who, and I mean, it's not even just those guys. Zach Hyman and Evan Bouchard. All these guys are really good players, and they're just a better team than St. Louis. That's, I think, fair and square to say. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, you can't do anything about that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's unfortunate, but
Pick up a
interesting.
point.
The Panthers. You pick up a point in Edmonton, and then you're like, okay, you could have gotten 2, but 1's fine. And the Panthers, lost their last 2 to Florida. And it's like previous Stanley Cup champions, and they're a very good team still. And you also match up against Spencer Knight, not Sergei Bobrovsky,
Yeah.
in that. So that's, things are, putting in the right direction here. But kind of not how it went, in my opinion. I Bolduc got on the board nicely. Love to see that. Young guys talked about it. Texier and him both get on the board this week. Fantastic. But what I saw in that game was a Florida team who just knew how to play the Blues tight and very well defensively. And the Blues didn't get much opportunity, especially in that third period. But I just didn't think that you could see. And by the way, Blues did a nice job of it too in the third period. They shut down Florida in some good ways, but also Florida shut us down more throughout that whole game, I thought.
Yeah, the first period wasn't as bad as the third in terms of shot generation and attempts. We got on the board first, went up 1-0. I thought I was there. I was at the game.
Yeah.
And great time, but it was really frustrating, especially in the third. But the first, when they went up, I was like, okay, maybe this is a good sign. And then really, I mean, they lost all of the pressure that they had applied earlier in the first, and Panthers really brought it on. Hofer, despite giving up those 2 goals in the first, he played really, really well. I mean,
Yeah.
asking a goalie to make some of the saves that he did, it's just crazy.
Yeah.
And we haven't been able to say that a lot, I feel like, about Bennington and Hofer because they just haven't been as good this year. But he stood on his head the entire game. And I thought he played fantastic. Now, in the second, the Blues, I thought, were a much better team. I know the shot attempts or shots on goal were like 9-8 to the Blues. I think the chances the Blues had were much better than the Panthers in the second. And they ended up being able to tie the game on a sunny deflection goal from Rob on a power play, which I had to chug a beer as a consequence, which was a promise I made to the people. So that was promising, and they looked good the entire second, and I thought it was going to be a good third. And the third period came around, and I felt like I was going a bit crazy because they had 3 shots on goal. I don't remember any of those 3 shots because it just seemed like there was literally nothing going. And I'm not going to say the Panthers had ample opportunities to score because they didn't. Most of the game was played in the neutral zone, but the Panthers had a lot more than the Blues, and the Blues had virtually nothing.
Yeah.
And I couldn't really believe that they were so flat and offensively disabled like they were. I thought it was crazy.
Yeah. I mean, again, you speak to the skill level of this team. Like Sam Reinhart, Matthew Tkachuk, Alexander Barkov, Sam Bennett, Verhaeghe and Tkachuk, like all those guys, and even Aaron Ekblad. Like having those guys as, your main core of guys compared to our core of guys, it's just not the same. And you're obviously going to get, better results with that squad more often than not. And we just don't see that type of core with the Blues right now. It's just too young. And that's a really, veteran core who's already won a cup and has been to 2 cup finals or 2 deep runs in the playoffs. But I agree. I saw some similar stuff to you. I think in the third period, it just was tight. And then obviously you had the late goal, and that was demoralizing. I felt for you.
Oh my God.
And I can imagine, what I imagine is that you were standing in those seats and, when Tom Calhoun, the PA guy's like, time to get on your feet, Blues fans. And you're on your feet, and then I could just see, like, right when was that Tkachuk that scored that goal?
Yeah.
That last one? Yeah. When Tkachuk scores that goal, it's just your head just droops down, and I felt for you when I was watching that.
It was a tough one to swallow. You're really just hoping that they park the bus and can force this into overtime because they had no shot at winning in regulation given their third period performance offensively. So everyone was on pins and needles just hoping that they can do it, myself included. And they did not. Kind of a fluky goal. I think Hofer actually owned up to it in the presser after and said that he should have saved it. I don't really blame him for that one. He made a ton of saves that he probably had no business making, and they avoided some goals that probably should have been in the back of the net. So hindsight, like, you wish they could have gotten a point. They did not deserve to win the game. So
yeah, but I think you pointed out something good though. Hofer had a much better game. He hadn't been playing very well recently, and he played very well. And you have to play well against Florida to even have a chance of winning. But that save in the first period was awesome.
It was awesome.
Yeah,
he made a few of those. I couldn't really believe. He was awesome, and the Blues have to thank their lucky stars that he was in that because they had no shot at winning that game if it wasn't for him.
Yeah, I agree with you. So then you have the Blackhawks, and the old retro Winter Classic jerseys are out.
I thought that was interesting that they threw those back on.
I will say I love those jerseys. They're not as cool as the Busch Stadium, obviously, alternate ones that we use now, basically. But I like him. I don't really like how the Blackhawks had red on our turf. I didn't like that. But that's beside the point. Again, going down 2-0 in the first period, God help me. Like that's, but again, would you really have expected something different? Like obviously Blackhawks are a bad team, but just in the way the Blues have been playing recently, I feel like that going down that way, it's like, I could have expected this.
I don't know. I feel like the only team that the Blues actually do complete comebacks pretty regularly against are the Chicago Blackhawks. So I've always found it funny. They are historically so bad after losing after the first period. But when it comes to playing the Blackhawks, I don't think that rule applies to them. So I honestly was not thinking they were out of it at all when they went down 2-0 because the Blackhawks suck.
Yeah,
so
suck.
I know that they had an opportunity to come back, which they did, but Parayko had a horrible turnover for that second Blackhawks goal. I think Neighbors had a turnover for the first one.
Yes.
I gotta say, and this is a side note, just watching so many of the games recently, the Blues have to have the most giveaways in their own zone of any team in the NHL. I would love to see an advanced stat. I would love to see several stats that track stuff like that, whether it's giveaways in their own zone, other teams' takeaways. I would love to know because they do such a poor job of breaking out. Almost every game they go through lulls where they're not able to get the puck and break out. And when you're not able to do that, it's so hard to generate offense. And that's what the problem was in Florida when Florida was here on Thursday. They cannot complete breakouts and get it out of their zone effectively. And other teams can against us all the time. Yeah. So I've noticed that's just become such a huge problem where they're giving it up in their own zone. They're not able to push the puck out and they're not able to get clean exits. And it's so frustrating to watch because if they're able to put that together, I'm sure things would go a little bit better for them. But that also is a difference between a good and bad team. So I guess I can't be too upset at it.
Yeah. So it says the Edmonton Oilers have the most giveaways by a team.
I tried to look it up. That was for last year. They don't have all of the
most
recent. Yeah, it was last year.
Okay,
so it's not always the worst teams that turn the puck over a lot,
right.
as I've learned.
Right.
But they got to be so bad at it. I would imagine they have to be.
Yeah. It's pretty bad sometimes, and I think it. But the problem is that it's hard to say that it's really coming from the defense all that much because I think a lot of the time
all the time.
Okay, well we talked. Yeah, Falk is I think an exception, but the forward core though when they're breaking out is I think a little unorganized with it. And
I think they're just as much to blame. Probably not more. Yeah. I just would love to know like what they talk about in film because it's got to be hit on all the time about exits and trying to get out of the zone cleanly. And it just doesn't seem like they're ever able to, except on rare occasions.
Yeah, and then but I think when like the occasional like Falk or Parayko or Fowler will connect with Kyrou skating up the wing. Like that's my favorite play that they have, but it works like 5% of the time.
Their best exit strategy, from what I've been able to gather the last few games, is Kyrou pretty much standing at half ice and Suter just rifling a wrister, trying to hit his blade so there's no icing and they can get a change. Yeah. And that's not a good strat. Like, I know it works well sometimes because you're able to get the puck deep. And Kyrou, if he's been on the ice, can get off the ice. Suter can get off the ice. It's fine as a strategy where, you need it deep. But in terms of any effectiveness and getting the puck deep and creating or checking opportunities, that's just not really it. But, it's just frustrating.
Yeah,
But back to the Blackhawks, though.
Yeah, right. But interesting game. We talked about it. 2-0. You go down the first period. Nick says he wasn't worried. I was kind of worried, if I'm honest.
I didn't say I wasn't worried. I just thought that they would probably score a goal or two, and they weren't going to lose like 5-0, was what I was thinking.
And lo and behold, Philip Broberg gets the goal, and then Nathan Walker, and within 10 seconds of each other. And I I love those two are some of my favorite players in the team. If I had to say it, and I'm so happy that Nathan Walker got another goal. But
The Walker goal was nasty.
Yeah,
well.
That's like not a typical goal from him. Like he does not go from the he does not snipe. He's on a sniper that comes from like beyond the dot and gets it top shelf. That's not what happens with him. But he did it, and it was fantastic to see that. But I think he was kind of surprised by that too.
I never have a problem watching Nathan Walker play. I never have. I don't think I ever will. He's a huge effort guy. He'll scrum it up with people that are twice his size. He's not afraid to shoot the puck. Like almost exactly has all of the intangibles that most people love. And I enjoy watching him play hockey.
That whole second period right there was one of the best periods I've seen the Blues play in a really long time. I thought that they just and obviously it was against Chicago. You should dominate them at least at some points of the game, but they dominated that whole second period. And the fact that
they had like 25 shots on goal that period.
Oh, it was nuts. And like I had not. I mean, have you seen that sort of play from them in the last couple?
They're playing the Blackhawks, so we gotta taper.
No, adjust for that. But I have not seen that, and it was really cool to see that. I think it was 3-2 with the Joseph goal, and that was a great pass from Schenn behind the net. I thought that was, but again, I don't know how that's not covered. Like that's,
I don't either. He was wide open.
He was right there.
Yeah. If that was Rob, though, he definitely would have missed. But whatever.
Come on. Well, dude, Rob got on the board, so hold on.
This game was actually on crack. Now that I'm looking back on it, it was so nuts. Oh my god! Blues take the lead going into the third. It's 3-2, and then third period, Blackhawks scored and tie it. Fowler gets one that was a weird soft goal, but I was at Obi Clark's watching the game.
Yep.
And Booch was right in front of it. So I was like, oh my God, did he tip that in?
That's what I thought too. Yeah.
I thought he scored, and I was yelling at Obi Clark's like, Booch.
Yeah.
And it actually didn't hit anyone. But I thought he broke his dry spell, and I was very excited for him. But he had 2 assists on the night. He didn't have the worst night in the world.
No, he didn't. I thought that he looked good. And that Buchnevich, Kyrou, Thomas line was together last night.
Yeah.
And they accounted for some points with each other. It was nice to see that. Did they play with the most chemistry and cohesion that I've ever seen those three play? I don't think so. I think the whole team itself is more overshadows their play of that line particularly. But I thought it was a good sign considering that your 3 best guys are together like that and they're connecting more than they have recently. Would you say that we should continue with that line? Because I would say that at least for now, you probably should.
I mean, those are our 3 best players.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it would be ideal for our 3 best players to be playing together. You would assume you'd be able to create the most offense when your 3 best players are together.
Yeah.
But the problem with it is the distribution is a bit top heavy. And I think that's where you run into problems. Unless you expect Brayden Schenn and Dylan Holloway and Matthew Joseph to be able to have a competitive second line. That's the only problem with it, I think, in my opinion. But I love it. I really like when they play together. They're all playmakers. They all have good shots, and they're all pretty fast. So I enjoy watching them play. I hope they do stick together as long as things, don't fall by the wayside with the other lines.
I just like how Thomas has somebody other than Booch now that he knows is going to be trustworthy and be able to do something offensively with the puck. Like I think Thomas just really struggled with, he was, I think obviously he struggles with distribution sometimes with the passes, but I think having somebody like Kyrou to be able to finish his chances, at least on a more consistent basis, then I think you could get some better results. Like Kyrou is I think miles above Neighbors, when it's all said and done, when it comes to just finishing ability, and just doesn't have that speed and snipe of a shot that Kyrie would have compared to Neighbors. So I do like that line.
Yeah, no, I do too. Neighbors is just not there. I think he started on the first line last night, I believe. And I think he got downgraded as the night wore on, but he's not there. I think he's dropped off a little bit. We talked about it last week. Hopefully he can make more strides, but not even close to the level of Kyrou or Thomas or Booch right now.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. But like it's interesting to note that, while we're talking about this first line, a lot more happened in that game. We stopped at 3-2 before we got on the Thomas Kyrie Booch talk. That ends up 3-2, and then 3-3, and
3-3.
then 4-3.
Yeah.
And then 4-3, 4-4, 5-4 Blackhawks, right?
Yeah, that game was crazy. Oh my god.
It was nuts. And I want to get to Binnington real quick because his play was interesting last night. Interesting because I can't decide if he played badly or if he just had it was just one of those games that, it's hard to really, do anything against, because I don't know. What do you think about that? Because it was hard for me to evaluate him.
Despite the shots on goal discrepancy, it was 40-20 by the end of the game in favor of the Blues. So when you're letting up 5 goals on 20 shots, that's a 75% save percentage. That's horrible. Usually when you're looking at it, the Blackhawks did have some high danger. Like all of those goals, besides the one, I don't know if it was Teravainen or the one after, for them to take the lead, but Suter is playing a pass block and sticks his stick out there, and it deflects off Suter's stick and goes right in between Bennington's legs, and it goes in the net. Yeah. So I don't really know if I can really fault anyone there. That wasn't a good goal. The other 4, though, like, you would have liked to probably see a save or 2 there. I think Bennington would probably echo that sentiment. Yes. But the reason I'm not going to fault him for yesterday, though, is that he stood in his head during the shootout last night. So I have no problem, really, as long as you get the 2 points and save it for the team.
I'm with you on that. I think the one that I would have liked to see him save, I know it was one of the more higher quality chances. That first one from Ryan Donato with the one-timer, he almost had that. He got a glove on it.
I know.
Yeah. So if you can get a glove on it, then normally you should be able to, save the whole thing. So that was maybe the one I think you'd have to have back. But when you were talking about that stat from like goals saved above expected last week, like those are the type of saves that would be in that category. And we just didn't really have any of those last night. And we haven't had a lot of those this season. But credit him in the shootout and we'll get to that in a second. But I think that it's a little concerning, but I think it's nice to see that, maybe we saw a little bit of it in the shootout. But the OT, though, was really surprisingly not good, entertaining overtime.
It was weird.
Yeah, it was not like Blues had a couple shots, but really nothing going. And also, by the way, before the OT, I wanted to say, I don't think the last 2 goals that the Blues scored, I actually think were not really that good of goals. I think we got a little lucky, especially with that tying goal that kind of just squeaked through there from the point, and the Cam Fowler goal as well. But so I think we got a little bit lucky there. Would you say that?
That's good. I mean, if Robert Thomas was going to score a goal, it was probably going to have to come in that fashion. So I admire the resiliency by him to just be looking for literally anything around the crease. If it's still bouncing, get on that thing, because I'm not scoring anything outside of that. So I thought it was so funny because he's literally looking, because he has the vantage point where he's looking right across the goal and he can see if any puck squirted behind the goalie. And he sees it squirt out and it's just sitting there and he's like, oh God. And he skates up there and taps it in the net. And you could see his celebration, he was like, thank God. And
Yeah.
on multiple fronts, one, you can't lose to the Blackhawks.
Yeah.
Two, I haven't scored a goal in like 9 games, and everyone's kind of pissed off. So this is a huge monkey off the back for him. So I'm very happy for Rob. I hope he is able to bring this forward a bit and score some more goals.
I agree. Apologize for the sidetrack there, but with the OT wasn't very entertaining, but a great save by Binnington, I think, at the end there of that overtime.
Huge save.
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
Yeah,
That would have sucked if they would have scored that goal. It was a huge save.
Great save, but also a big fail. Was that Mikheyev? Was that Mikheyev on that opportunity at the end? Like if I'm you, I would be really upset by not finishing that one because he had him on the backhand for sure. Binnington was beat.
He just stuck his pad. I think he hit his stick or something. I don't know. I forget, but it was a big save regardless. Let's move forward into the shootout. The shootout was hilarious. It just kind of spoke to how bad both teams are at scoring goals, but also I guess they scored 5 each. But neighbors should not lead your shootout efforts. Am I going crazy for that?
Well, you know what's interesting about that? I think that is literally a practice thing that they do. Like, I think at practice, whoever's like winning those little shootout competitions that they have, I think they do that's the person who's going to be consistently at number one. I don't think it's like a coordinated move who's been playing the best recently. I literally think it's whoever's the best at a shootout because it's a very different game and very coordinated effort.
I feel like Neighbors never, ever scores a goal on breakaways or shootouts.
I've never seen him score a shootout.
So I'm not sure what's happening at practice, but I think games, he doesn't do anything. And then the thing that's funny, and this is my last point, and we can fly through this shootout. Yeah. Neighbors goes, and then they have Connor Bedard go. And you're like, that's a huge discrepancy in terms of talent and who you'd want to take a shootout attempt. So I'm like, whatever. It's not going to be my biggest gripe of the team. There's many. That's probably not one of them, but I just thought it was dumb.
Yeah, I could see that. I think that's an interesting point. I think so Schenn scores.
Good goal.
And Schenn always scores in shootouts.
He does score a lot of shootout goals. Yeah.
Really good. And then everybody else misses. Like every single person until Radek Faksa.
I mean, and some bad attempts too.
Oh, terrible.
Like embarrassing ones.
So I was watching it with this Bruins fan, and he played hockey for his whole life. And he was like, these aren't even good attempts at shootouts. And I'm like, they're not. Because every time Blues love trying to go 5-hole on the shootout every single time. They love it. And that's what Neighbors did on his first one. I'm like, oh, that probably is predictable. But besides that, like you didn't make many moves and a lot of shots just, going from center ice and then moving in and then just shooting. Not really a lot of dangles until Faksa.
I know, and that bewildered me. You could tell whenever someone tried to skate on, I forget what the goalie's name is on Chicago.
Soderblom.
Yeah, Soderblom. You could tell that when people tried to skate in at him and throw a move, he was a little bit wobbly. He was pretty unshaken when someone would just go in there and try to shoot a wrister. And that's literally what everyone else seemed to want to do. And I'm like, it's clearly not working, fellas. And then Faksa came up huge, did exactly what Schenn did. Didn't pull it off, I would say, as smoothly, but was able to throw it in there. And it was a good move and was able to score. Benner, again, did a good job stretching out that left pad and eliminate the opportunity for the Blackhawks on the opposite end. So good win, shaky, scary, good win.
I'm with you. I think, Binnington, not the best shootout guy, I think, in all history. I wouldn't really take him in my top 5 if I really wanted a goalie to have me in a shootout, but he played really well. Give him credit. So let's move along here. Some other things. So we talked about the last couple games. Funny rumors happening around the Blues news that Schenn's been coming up and some trade talks. And Toronto maybe being the best fit for him since he'd be reuniting with Craig Berube. And I think the Blues would have to retain some cap to let this happen. But it's an interesting thing. I think we talked about it a little bit, that he's getting paid $6.5 million, and it wasn't for 11 years. It was my bad. It was 8 years. And for some, I don't know why I thought that, but so 6.5 for 8 years, and they would probably have to retain a little bit. So let's just say they retained, 25% or something like that. Then Schenn becomes a really valuable player.
Yeah, I'm all for, like, I like Schenn. I think he's had a better year. I think he's a good captain of a hockey team. He's a good leader, spokesperson for the club, if you will. I don't think his play still warrants the amount of money that he makes, and probably doesn't fit the Blues timeline. Like, if we're thinking about the Blues being contenders again for a Stanley Cup, not just on the outside looking in of a playoff spot, which they have been the last 3 years, Schenn probably doesn't fit the timeline. We're probably going to have to wait a couple years. And at that point, Schenn's 33.
Yep.
He's going to be 35 years old by the time that would come around. I would assume he'll keep regressing just due to father time. Yeah. And I again, though, he's played better this year. I would be sad to see him go. But if the Blues were able to get a decent return and also trade Schenn to a contender, like, I don't want him to go to a bad team. He has a full no trade clause. So it's not like Schenn's going to be content with going to Chicago or any team that's bad.
But in July,
modified, yeah,
it gets modified to a 15 team.
Okay.
So that's why the rumors are happening.
Yeah.
And honestly, that's kind of a cool thing for Schenn. I didn't know that happened. The whole, like, is it if your franchise that you're on is really bad, and you also don't want to go somewhere that just, like, I don't know, like Anaheim right now, then you have a chance to go somewhere good, which is really cool. I did not know the NHL did that, but some interesting things with that. And then obviously with Falk and Leddy too, you just never know what's going to happen with them.
I also heard Jordan Kyrou's name creep up there.
I think that'd be horrible.
If the Blues were able to not have to retain any of his salary and get back some big prospects or players or both, whatever it may be, I'm more than open to it. Something probably needs to happen to the core in order for the team to probably get better. And that's kind of the reality that I think I'm living in.
I'm in disagreement with that. I can't get behind trading Kyrou right now, and I don't see it happening. You sign the guy for an 8x8, and you're gonna lose faith in him 2 years in.
He's been on the team for 6 years.
I'm aware.
About it in terms of contract,
but he's been your best player for the last 3. And it's
I would not say that either. I would say Rob has been better than Jordan.
But
sure.
he's scored the most goals for those 3 years. And
goal scorers doesn't mean that you're the best player. It means you score the most goals.
Well, of course it doesn't mean that, but I'm saying that if you don't have a guy like that, you're not you wouldn't have had the same push to the playoffs that you did last year. You wouldn't have had these teams could have been so much worse without Jordan Kyrou. I never thought I would be defending him, but I just think that he has had a really good season this year, and is one of the best I've seen him play in both sides of the ice, defensively, offensively. I think he's much better with his defense and back check right now.
He's definitely having a better year this year, but in response to the last 3 years, like, Kyrou's plus minus in 2022, 2023 was minus 38. Minus 38. And he's scoring a lot of goals.
Yeah.
So I know the sentiment, and I don't, in my perfect world, I would like for Kyrou to stay on the team, But Jordan Kyrou, unfortunately, and I would say this about Rob probably as well, even though I think Rob's a better player, are those two players, if we want to continue forward with this core, are they going to win you a Stanley Cup as them being your top two players? I would say probably not. You'd have to have a stellar second line that are just as good, if not maybe marginally worse. But like those guys are not, top 10 players in the NHL. They're, like bottom 5 of the top players in the NHL. So like that's the problem that I feel like we're facing as a franchise, and we're probably going to make a decision, and it just, we'll have to find the proper suitor if we did want to shop them, but we're definitely running into something here, and it's not going to be, hey, let's just trade Schenn and everything's going to work itself out.
I don't want to spend too much time on this because this could be a debate that goes on for a long time, and I don't want to go over an hour. So
I agree.
We'll stop that
have
there.
a separate episode.
Although to be continued on that, because that's a really important topic. Maybe we'll do that when for our 2 weeks episode right before the Blues resume play again. And then I also wanted to briefly touch on Blues prospects. Dalibor Dvorsky was playing the AHL All-Star game this past week, and he took home some hardware and scored 2 goals for the accuracy shooting competition.
Yeah,
and then he scored 2 goals for the Atlantic, and only teenager on the team. That's pretty impressive in the All-Star game. Really impressive. And he's been great for the Thunderbirds.
He's awesome. And I've been very excited about his potential trajectory for the Blues. I'm very curious if they will call him up at any point this year. I would say probably not, but I think it depends how bad the Blues are in the next few weeks after Four Nations. But I'm curious about him. And then the other elephant in the room in the Blues prospect pool is Jimmy Snuggerud, not in the AHL, still on Minnesota, but tearing it up in Minnesota right now on a complete heater, scoring goals, assists, plus minus is through the roof. He's having such a great year, and I'm so pumped about it. It seems like he's got so many different tools in the arsenal.
I think it's right now. If Ryan Leonard wasn't on Boston College, which thankfully is, and if he wasn't playing, then Jimmy Snuggerud probably would be a Hobie Baker favorite right now. He's definitely up there in the Hobie Baker favorites, but he's not going to get it. But yeah, he's been spectacular. 20 goals, 21 assists for the kid in 30 games. Really good, and love to see that. Minnesota's a pretty good team as well, but him contributing as I think number 4 in overall NCAA hockey and points, pretty impressive. So good there for Blues prospects. Hopefully continue some development. And if Jordan Kyrou gets traded, then maybe Jimmy Snuggerud or Dalibor Dvorsky will be up soon.
That doesn't have to happen for them to be up. But
well, I don't really see it happening any other way. I don't really see it happening at least this season.
Just send Bolduc down or something. You don't have to trade Kyrou.
Actually, it's an interesting thing. But thing is Bolduc. I don't know. We could spend more time on that as we go. But and then last thing, Four Nations. We want to do a brief preview. And
USA.
Yeah. And so Team USA, best odds to win the Four Nations tourney.
Shocking.
Yeah, I was shocked by that too. Plus 145. Canada's plus 155. And that's going to be interesting to see. I think you have 2 Blues guys in Canada with Parayko and Bennington, and also I didn't even know this, by the way. They also have obviously Doug Armstrong as their GM, but then they have the video coach as the Blues video coach is the Canadian video coach, and the goaltending coach for Bennington, Dave Alexander. Yeah,
nice.
So 5 Blues players or Blues organizational figures on Team Canada. So I think this will be interesting. I really am interested to see what Jordan Bennington can do in this. I think we have not seen this guy in the pressure moments like playoffs in a really long time. And now we get to see it. What do you think he's actually going to do?
I don't know. I'm hoping he's just can kind of fly under the radar because people have very strong feelings about Jordan Bennington, whether that's warranted or not. I would say no. I think people overreact to his antics all the time. I think it's unwarranted. But if he does not play well, the hockey universe is going to let St. Louis know it. So I'm a little bit nervous about that. I also don't care though, because I don't want Canada to succeed in any stretch. So I want to take a look real quickly. The American Four Nations hockey team is stacked with players. Like I rattled a few off on the notes, but Jack and Quinn Hughes, Kyle Connor, Brady and Matthew Tkachuk, Austin Matthews, Jack Eichel, Adam Fox, Hellebuck. Like that is such a great roster. And I know Canada's is also very good, but come on. Like I am so happy that American hockey is trending in such a positive direction where we're competing. We saw it with Ryan Leonard on Team USA at juniors. Yep. Like they were a better team and ended up winning gold. And it's just exciting to see how up and coming and already really good American hockey is right now.
Yeah. And then what's interesting too is the ages of these Americans. Pretty young team still. Like not that Jack Eichel and Tkachuk are young guys, but they're prime guys. They're in their primes. And they're mid to late 20s. And Matt Boldy being one of the youngest on the team with Brock Faber. But like guys that are, experienced, but still are very young. And then when you look at Canada, obviously you got Crosby as the captain, and then you got guys like Mark Stone and then McKinnon and Marchand. Like those are all guys that, again, really good players. Not going to discount that, but they're a little old. They're getting on the older side. And but they're still good players, obviously.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's always the elephant in the room when you have players like McKinnon and McDavid. Things could really flip on a dime when you're playing against them because they're just that good. And USA has such great depth and such great stars, but they're not McDavid or McKinnon. Yeah. So that's going to be really interesting to see. They play Canada on February 15th. So I'm extremely excited. That's a Saturday. So I'm pumped up. And it's in Boston too, right? So
I'm gonna try and see if I can get tickets for that.
Yeah, it's gonna be sweet.
But it just sucks though, because like obviously I'll be Team USA all the way, but in that game, it's like God, I almost hope Binnington has a good game and it's like a 1-1 type thing.
Fly under that radar.
Fly under the radar.
Don't do anything brash.
I don't want people hitting my line, saying, "Oh my God, Binnington is one of the worst goalies I've ever seen."
I can already see that now. It's gonna happen. It's totally gonna happen. It's gonna suck too. Darn.
Then they always have Sam Montembeault as one of their backups.
Holy cow! Hockey Canada on the goalie department is sad.
Sam Montembeault and Aiden Hill, who won a cup with Vegas, but
I know, but he's not. No.
Yeah.
Jordan Bennington. God. Come on, man.
We love Benner. We want him to play well, but I just don't know. We'll see.
Maybe don't play him against USA. I don't know. I'm trying to.
I hope they do. It would be so fun. But we never know. And obviously, Finland and Sweden will be interesting stories as well with very good teams. But we want to wrap it up here. Appreciate you all for joining us live. Again, this will be out on our Apple podcast and Spotify links. Those are in our link tree on the Instagrams and Twitters. Check us out there if you were unable to watch the whole thing. Got into a lot of topics today. Blues hockey is in an interesting track, but we will continue to fill you in on that as we go to a Four Nations break that is starting after today on Monday. So Blues have some time to rest, not for Parayko and Binnington, and we have some time to rest. Next Saturday, though, we will be filming our first guest interview, and we will release that information later this week on who that is. I will give you one hint that you will recognize his voice. That is all I will say. Thank you guys for tuning in. Hope you have a great week. We'll catch you on next Sunday for our guest interview.
Saturday.
Yeah. Well, we're going to release it Sunday, I think.
Okay.
Record on Saturday. All right. See you guys. Have a good
Cool.
week.
See you guys.